Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years.
Hi folks, Sue from 1A Auto here, and today we're going to be putting in the driver's side CV shaft axle on our 07 Mazda 6 sedan. Just take all 5 lug nuts off. Set them aside someplace safe. So once I took the tire off, I brought it back down because I have to break free the axle nut. So I put a nice 4-foot pry bar in here, and it's going to put the pressure on the ground as I try to reverse this axle nut off. Now this is a 32 millimeter socket for this axle nut. It is torqued to 202 foot-pounds. So you're going to need a nice long ratchet or breaker bar. There we go. Once you get the nut off, it's safe now to remove the breaker bar. The pry bar, and now we can raise it up and start removing the axle. I'm going to remove the cotter pin for the tie rod end, then remove the nut on the tie rod end. You cannot reuse the cotter pin, so if it breaks, that's cool because you're going to replace it with a new one. Sometimes these rust inside, and the only way to get them out is to drill them out. Let's not wish that today, although I'll be fine. As you can see, these just broke off, so I'm going to try to pull them one at a time out. There we go. Now I'm going to spray some rust penetrant oil on here, and then I'm going to take the nut off. Now with the penetrant spray on there soaking in there, I'm going to put my 17 millimeter socket on the tie rod end nut and break it free. Okay, I'm going to turn this out just to get a little bit more throw. Turn the steering wheel to the right. See how close we're getting. There we go, coming to the end of it. That is warm. Now with the nut off of the outer tie rod end, I'm going to hit the knuckle on these points, right here mostly, to vibrate the tie rod end shaft loose from the knuckle. There you have it. Popped right down. Next, I'm going to be removing the upper control arm nut. That's a 17 millimeter socket. Okay, just give it a good tug. Now we're free to set that. We're going to hit the upper knuckle into the upper ball joint, right at the same spot. They have those nice marks. That's everything you don't want to do. There we go. All right. So now with that dislodged, you can see how the knuckle rolls forward here. And I can see that I have some strain here on my front flex hose. Not much on this cable. but because I want the max out of this knuckle to come forward so I can get this CV shaft out, I'm going to undo this one mounting bolt, and that's a 12mm socket. I might have to undo the ABS here also. I'll see. I think I'm going to undo the ABS just because it's, in this case, it's always safe to be, it's better be safe than sorry. I don't want to put any pressure or strain on the ABS cable, nor do I want to do it to the front flexos. That's why I'm dismounting this. It's not like we're opening up the hose, so there's no air going to get into the system, because we don't have to dismount the caliper to get this axle out. Yeah, now I've got the more throw to it without any pressure. So I'm going to dismount the ABS sensor mounted bracket right here, and that is a 10mm socket. Now I can really get a good view. The axle shaft is coming out right through the hub here. So I want to see if I have any movement in it. So I'm going to grab a hammer and see if I can tap it through. There we go. I'm going to go from the back side here and pull it all the way out. There we have it. Now we have full access view of it. I think the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to undo the wishbone into the lower control arm, and that is a 50mm socket on this long bolt. I'm going to pull the bolt out so that the wishbone is free from the lower control arm ball joint, so I can move the shaft out through the bottom. Then I'm going to disconnect it from the transmission. So 15mm socket on this wishbone lower part of the strut. Break that free. The nice design about this is it has a self-locking nut on the other side. It's got a middle tab that's welded to it, so you never need to use a wrench. And that's what the nut looks like, welded with a tab on it, so when it comes around, bottoms out whether you're tightening or loosening. So now I'm going to pull the bolt out. There we go. Now you can see the whole knuckle comes right down, drops down. I'm going to have clearance right here to pull the shaft out once I break it free from the transmission. Now I'm going to take a pry bar and I'm going to wedge it between the inner part of the CV shaft and the transmission seal right in here. You'll see the tip of my pry bar. They do have some tools for these that will work. Sometimes it does and doesn't, but you just got to give it a good tweak. There you go. Pulled it right out. I already have a catch pan down below, and even if you're working on your back and you have jack stands, training fluid can come out, so you're going to want to catch that and not make a mess. So with it broken from the transmission, I'm clear to pretty much grab this CV shaft and manipulate it out. This is where I'm going to slide it through that wishbone. And here we go. There's our old driver's side CV shaft. We're going to get ready to install the new one. Here we have an axle shaft from 1aauto.com. The new one is on this side, and the old one is right here. If you compare the two, they're both the same length, come with the same amount of tooth ABS ring. It's pressed on, and the new axle from 1A Auto comes with a new lock nut. On the opposite side, that's the inner side. This part goes into the transmission. It comes with a new lock clip. It's got the splines for the fluid flow, the bearing seat. If you need this part or any other part for your car, click on to oneaauto.com. I'm going to fish the new axle up behind the knuckle, and then I'm going to put the shaft into the wishbone area. Start lining up the new axle inner CV shaft area into the transmission. See that seal? This is where you just give it a good push. Yeah, I'm going to have to lower it because of... Oh, you got it. Yep, snapped in, locked in. Sometimes because I'm vertically challenged, yes, that means I'm short, I have to bring things down to more of a waist level for strength. But I got that one in. Nice. So now I can manipulate the shaft, axle shaft, into the hub bearing. It's lined up really good there. Try to get the wishbone back into place. Now I'm going to lower it so that I can lift my knuckle up. I'm going to put the top control arm bolt, ball joint in, nut in first, so it takes some of the pressure off for me to put the rest of it together. Now I'm at a level that I can work at a little bit easier. I'm going to see the splines, so I got to line the splines up on the CV shaft and push that through the hub. So I see there's a lot of rust in that hub, as you can see too. I'm going to put a little penetrating spray in there and hopefully clean some of the rust out. Look at the rust come out, you can see it pouring right out of there. Okay, now I'm going to continue to try to line the splines up. There we go. So now I'm going to put the upper ball joint back into the knuckle with the nut, start it hand tight. That way I can really probably get the wishbone bolt in easier. There we go. As you saw, I lifted that up. I just put it on my arm, gave it a good lift up, started that. We're going to torque all these bolts and nuts once we get them all together. And now I'm ready to do the same on the wishbone. Put that bolt in. So I'm going to put the wishbone bolt right through the control arm again. And to do that, I'm just going to lift it up a little bit. I'm going to get a little hammer. There we go, poked it all the way through. Now I've got my nut with the self-locking arm on it, so it will spin it around. So I'm gonna make sure that it locks into place here. 15mm socket. I'm gonna just tighten this up while I'm here. So this is gonna come right around and bottom out on that wishbone. Just snugging it because all these have torques to it. I'm going to torque it up in a minute. I'm just going to put the new axle nut on, hand tight. It's a 32mm socket. Just try to bottom that out a little bit. Now I'm going to move on to my brackets. I'm going to install my front flex hose bracket. Put the bolt in for my ABS sensor. And I'm going to tighten those up. 10mm socket for this one, the ABS sensor bracket, and 12mm socket for that one. And then front flex hose. Now I'm going to get a 17mm socket and snug up my upper control arm. Just snugging it. Now I'm ready to reinstall my tie rod end. It's a 17mm also. I'm gonna have to get a pry bar, pry up on this like that to get the tapered stud of the ball joint to seat so that the lock nut won't spin the stud. Won't spin the stud in place. See how far I can get. So I like to get my nice long pry bar. I'm just going to put some pressure on that. There's one more trick that I've seen and I've done in the past, is I've actually just tilted the tie rod end. It's not so much of an effort. Let's see what size I can fit in there. Probably going to be a 19. Yeah. Let's see if that works. Okay. This is going to be a stubborn one. Now that the tie rod end is tightened, I'm going to put my new cotter pin in. Now we're going to get ready to torque up the upper control arm, nut, and the wishbone nut and bolt. And we're going to lower our car, torque our axle nut, then put our wheel on. And then we're going to check the training fluid because we lost just a smidge of training fluid. So while it's up in the air, I'm actually going to clean that. So that way I know that it's all cleaned. Okay, let's get the torque wrench and torque up the wishbone and the upper control arm. So now I'm going to torque the upper control arm ball joint nut to the knuckle. It is 39 foot-pounds, 17mm socket. And that's all set. I'm going to move down to the wishbone, to the forward control arm bushing bolt, and that is 93 foot-pounds. So I have a 15mm socket on the wishbone bolt, and it's 93 foot-pounds. I'm going to torque it to. Now with that all set, we've got the hose connected, we've got the ABS sensor wire connected, I've got a tie rod end connected with a new cotter pin, upper ball joint nut, wishbone. Now we're going to lower it and torque the axle nut and put the tire on. Now with my power bar in place, holding it from spinning, I got my 32mm socket and my torque wrench is set up to 202 foot-pounds. I'm going to torque this axle nut. I want to clarify the importance of torquing a front wheel bearing. That's a wheel bearing in there, pressed-in bearing that axle goes through, and that is putting pressure on that bearing. If you use an air gun and you under or over tighten it, you will make the life of that bearing, you'll wear it out faster. Too tight is not good and loose is not good. So there is a difference in importance of really torquing the axle nuts on hub bearings. So now that I have my axle nut torqued down to specs, 202 foot-pounds, I raised it back up and I'm gonna hammer over in the lock. Stops it from motion. You never know, but this is what they call a lock it in place. Some use cotter pins. Just really have to make it a divot. Good enough. That'll help stop that from moving. Not that it should at 202 foot-pounds. I'm gonna hand tighten the lug nuts on. We'll lower it and we'll torque this wheel. The torque on this wheel, lug nut, is 65 to 87 foot-pounds. I'm probably going to go to max because the car is an 07, so that means these wheels have been off quite a bit. So I'm going to go right up to 87. Always a star pattern, which I know you know. Come on. And the reason for it, star pattern, is to keep the pressure equal on the hub all the way around. All right, now I'm going to lower it to the ground and torque it to 87 foot-pounds. All right, 87 foot-pounds. I'm going to do it twice in the star pattern just to make sure it's all seated. And there you go.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at oneauto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.